Yo, what up guys, it's Flark, and I think it's time for an update video. This is one of the most convoluted and complicated expansions of all time, from what I've played of WoW, but I'm pretty sure that's set in stone at this point. We have 5 or so systems all intertwined now. Since the beginning of the expansion, we have, of course, essences, traits, base itemization, trinkets, and of course corruptions. They're all working together. They have many synergies, many things that make one better with another or worse with another. Better on certain classes, better on certain specs, better with certain comps, and because of that it has created not just one definitive build, but dozens. And I think that's been one of the hardest things to lock down. I always get questions about, would I run this piece or this piece? Why do you run this now instead of this? And it's always been very difficult to answer. But now I think I've finally come to conclusion that there's just a lot of viable builds for a lot of different situations based on your own playstyle, the comp that you're playing, or the gear that you have available. And certain corruptions or gear strategies become better when those situations change. So recently, I pushed over 3K with my team, Frosty K, DH Ardruid. Not a lot of Ardruid melee cleaves out there, and we also don't spite, so pretty proud of that one. But of course, synergy and communication is good, but it also has a lot to do with this kind of stuff, the gear on the screen, and that's absolutely a huge part of it. So I'd like to now make one final video, presumably, I think I've said that before, for BFA, but this time instead of a Frost build and an Unholy build, 2 separate videos that go over it extensively, I'm going to wrap up the expansion. I'm going to talk about Frost and Unholy here, and I'm going to talk about a bunch of different builds that kind of have defined the strongest parts of the specs in PvP, and based on your comp, your playstyle, and the items that you have available, you can create one of those and then just rock it, perfect it, and try and push. Because listen, I generally wouldn't make 5 or so videos in one season, but man, MMR is inflating fast, and what that means is you could probably push to some new ratings that you guys haven't gotten before. This is going to be a high MMR season, and it's going to be a long season. So if you guys are looking for some last minute goals to grind out this gear and grind out a team that you have synergy with, this would be the opportunity. So I'm going to give you guys one more, a deep breath, just get it all out there. One more definitive guide that I think will help you guys build and push in the last few months here. So how are we going to do that? First, we're going to start with Frost. We're going to outline some builds. Then we're going to go with Unholy. We're going to outline some builds. And I'm going to highlight the entire video. So I'm going to timestamp it, so it'll give you those sections, and you can just pick whichever one looks the most interesting or watch the whole thing, and then you can come back to it and try and craft it from that set. So first, let's start with the build that I'm running. 3K, I've ran it the whole time since we started pushing, and I have good faith in it, obviously, for that reason. This is a Haste verse with some crit, Gushing Wounds Frost build. Why does this work? Well, Haste verse Gush is just a combination for any melee. Haste makes Gush proc more, Verse makes Gush do more damage, and Gush itself is kind of just a enabler of single target damage for any spec in the game. That is huge for Frost, because Frost did not have a lot of single target damage, which is why I shied away from it. But just the raw amount of pressure that combination brings, Haste versus Gush, changes Frost into actually having single target kill windows. So I originally didn't see it coming because I underestimated just how much single target pressure you could pump from having 9 Gushing Wounds. And to be fair, I didn't really have any 475 pieces when I was originally trying it, nor did I have enough Gushing Wounds, because most of this experimentation was done in between vendors or even before the vendor. But when you get 9, and when you get 475 pieces or 485 pieces, and you get Gushing on every single piece here, and you get a lot of haste and verse to back that up, you have a new win condition. You have single target pressure. And with Frost, that has a lot of disruption. When you are constantly sustaining damage and they are constantly unable to peel from you, that gives you a win condition outside of Chill Streak. So you can get their CDs and then grip, blind, Chill Streak. So it's kind of like a constant damage spec. What this build brings, what this build synergizes well with. Let's talk about that. Demon Hunters, they're very high single target sustain as well. They also run Gush. They have very high mobility and they have the AoE stun. Probably Warrior, because it also brings very high single target sustain with bleeds and maybe Gush. Rend and Deep Wound. You also have Sharpened Blade, which makes it hard for them to recover. Definitely not as good as Demon Hunter, but still I think it has value. This build would probably not be the preferred choice with Windwalker, though. That would be the build we're going to talk about next. So look at those sustain classes. DH, Warrior. If you have to play with a caster, your friend only plays caster, maybe that would be good with an Ellie with Gushing Wound. Like Ellie with Gushing Wound, and you guys have big bursts with Earth Shock and Chill Streak. But you both kind of set up pressure with Gushing as well, and they're just Lasso and Flame Shock and all those kind of procs base damage. So that's the kind of thing you're looking for. You're playing a comp and a playstyle that's very sustain heavy, just keep rotting them down, snowball pressure. Then once you've gotten things out of them, you just do a big grip blind Chill Streak go. Warrior, DH, Ellie Shaman, maybe even Survival Hunter that has a lot of sustain. Are Frosty K Survival Hunter a tier 1 comp? No, but I'm giving you all of the types of things that would work in case you don't have access to a 475 Mythic Gear DH. Sometimes they queue with other people, that they're in hot demand. So again, this is my build that I am currently running at our 3100 MMR. Haste versus Gushing. I also have some crit and some mastery because mixed damage is kind of the name of the game. You get some bigger Chill Streak goes with a little bit more mastery. You get more pillar with crit on blood of the enemy. You get a ice cap for the more pillar, right? And then crit increases damage of blood of the enemy, or the likelihood that you'll get the damage increase of blood of the enemy. So it's like a mixed damage. It's a constant damage. So you want to prioritize haste and burst, but you can have some crit and some mastery and all gushing. That's 9 gushing. You can see every piece. No lion here. Mostly put that on 475 pieces. Right, I have an Echoings that I'm going to show you guys later for Purge Protection, but there's my set. So, when would you build this? Well, if that's just a playstyle that you really enjoy, you can seek out each piece. But this is a set of gear that's really dependent on high item level pieces. As we all know, Gushing does more when it's on a higher item level piece. So this is a set that just requires high item level pieces. So if you have a lot of haste first piece that are 470, 475 that you've gotten from the Mythic Plus or from high rated PvP, that's when you're going to build this. Or if you want to seek it out, it's just when you want to create a sustained damage comp and you realize that your DH that you play with also brings a lot of that to the table, has a very similar gear set, that would be good. So it seems hard that there would be any other build when that one seems so good, and that's what I'm playing. But like we've mentioned, and we're going to go on to this now, Frost has another entire set that's extraordinarily good. Mez was playing it on stream. I've also played it, and it was the build that I made a video about initially. It was the Mastery % build. And that thing did not just become bad overnight. It's still absurdly good, and that's why I have to make this update video now. That's the exact problem. There are multiple really good sets of gear and really good playstyles that you can have to win games. There just are. There's not one build that's just so incalculably better than the rest that you wouldn't even bother talking about anything else. And that's because corruption is so powerful that it just creates multiple good things to run. So the next build we're going to talk about, and this will be the next timestamp, is Frost Mastery. So this is identical to the YouTube video that I made. So you probably already know it. You could go back. I'll probably link that video. It's just my huge burst, AoE burst video where I talked about Mastery %. The only thing that I'll mention here is that, first off, you can do it with full Mastery % or half Mastery %, half procs. All the traits Trade Winds, Frost Whelps, all still extremely good. You get Verse Mastery on every piece. That's still very good. So pieces like this, Verse Mastery, that, Verse Mastery. You can see it still has my procs and my mastery percent from when I played it. We've got another one right here in case you guys are visual. You like seeing it, Verse Mastery. So that's extremely important. But also, we're going to do the same thing we did with the other build. When is this good? Well, it's extremely high burst. So you lose some of that single target pressure, but your goes are extremely impactful, which means the goes kill way better, but they're also more important, and if they're countered, you're in trouble. So this works with classes that help you get those goes more reliably. So again, DH does work really well with this. So DH kind of has its hand in both camps, but this also leads more into a Windwalker kind of playstyle, where you've got the grip leg sweep, and you've got the grip fist slow, and you've got rings for spike goes, and you have all sorts of tools that help you get those big burst windows off. Also, Windwalker is very spiky as well. It has short, sudden burst, especially with Touch of Death, so it complements that all-in playstyle where you're gonna get the kill here. You're not gonna get the kill randomly over the course of the game. Again, if you're playing with a caster, because your friend only plays caster, instead of the Ellie setup, or maybe even an Esprit setup where it's more sustained damage from the past build, you would run with like a Destro lock. And in an Infernal Stun, you would Chill Streak, Blood of the Enemy, then they would double coil out, and then the bolts would start flying. A very burst-heavy comp. Is Frosty K Destro a tier 1 comp? No. But I'm trying to open up a thought process for how you would decide, hey, this is what I want to play with, this is what I have access to, which of these builds would suit me best. It's like a key, right, that you can look through, like on a sheet of paper, where it just be like, okay, I want this, and then it'll match me up with a certain build and playstyle. So that's the Destro, the Windwalker, the high burst, short windows, great crazy setups, Infernal Stun, Coil, Shadow Fury, Leg Sweep, Touch of Death, those kind of mechanics. DH also works just because Grip Nova and DH always does so much damage that would still be obscenely good. So those are the Frost setups right now. You've got a Mastery setup and a Haste First Gush setup. These do not intertwine. You wouldn't really want to run like some Mastery procs in addition to some Haste First Gush. You would just really want to go one or the other. With Unholy, there's some mix match, and we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about a few more things while we're in Frost. So we've established both builds, and we've kind of established the roles and the comps and the playstyles that go along with them. So what about some of those other burning questions, like traits, and trinkets? We know about this one. So let's talk about that a little bit. With the primary build, you're trying to pump as much damage from multiple sources so you always have pressure. So first, you grip blind Nova Chill Streak, and you get a lot of AoE pressure. Then they all spread out. Then they're dying to Gushing Wound, and you're Haste, and you're getting more pressure because you're getting those Pillar of Frost back up from Ice Cap and a lot of Haste. So what do you do when they get low? You double Dressed. Okay, so dressed fits itself perfectly into the Haste First Gushing mixed damage, lots of pressure, snowballing pressure build. Would it then work easily with the Mastery build? No. It's counterproductive. You'd think, well, it does damage to all nearby enemies, but it splits it. So you're already front loading that build with so much burst from your own abilities. You would much rather add a trinket that increases your own damage to further that Chill Streak, Blood of the Enemy explosion. Maybe a Mastery one, maybe a badge. We have the trinkets we talked about in that video. There is the badge, and of course, let's all take a look at it together. It's from Underrot, right? The Vial of Animated Blood. These are the types of trinkets that would roll in the AoE burst heavy build. The Drestigath is for that mixed damage, always have pressure. They get away, that's no problem. Kill them with Dressed. Okay, they lost all their CDs, rot them with Gushing. All right, now we have a go back, Grip Blind, Nova Chill Streak. You can kind of see just by talking about it how there's always pressure. So the other trinkets that work for that obviously are Maraktha's Fang, which does a lot of damage AoE. Ironically, it's completely nuts. And you can, of course, spite, though I don't. And you can easily use a bike. So these are trinkets that fall into that category. The bike also falls into the AoE burst category. But more so, I think the badge and the mastery trinket are going to be better fits there. Mastery being the core aspect of that setup. As for traits, it's very simple. With the mastery set, you want to continue stacking those mastery giving traits, which are Frostwhelps, Trade Winds, Blood Siphon. What a great piece right there. You can have a Frozen Tempest, of course. So those are really good traits. Heart of Darkness also works. And for the just constant damage, Icy Citadel is the name of the game for constant damage. You still want one Frozen Tempest. And of course, you're going to want one Runic Barrier like always. Overwhelming Power giving you that haste is very valuable. Crit is still valuable, believe it or not, because of Ice Cap. But you just kind of always want damage. So Icy Citadel triple is very, very good for that. Of course, what else would be good for that? Heart of Darkness. It's the perfect secondary stat builder. So that's Frost. It's not as neat a bow as I'd want to wrap it up into, but this is just going to be another discussion type video. So if you've watched this far, thank you, and I hope that's helped. So we'll talk about Unholy a little bit too. It's actually going to be much shorter. So for Unholy, I'll switch over there just for aesthetic, but I don't really need to. This is going to be a touch-up. People have talked about a lot of things. How many haste do I run? How many gush do I run? Is Gatiku still the best thing ever? And what do I run when I have run out of corruption budget? Because it's like you put gushing and haste on everything, and now you have no corruption when you get to high resistances. So what do I do then? Those are all great questions. So let's talk about those to close out this video and hopefully close out the season with a bang. So what would you want for haste versus gushing? I think the answer is, who cares? The corruptions are so good and so synergistic with each other that a combination of both, by any means, is obscene. So to answer that question, you kind of ask yourself another question. How many 475 pieces do I have? How many 470 pieces do I have? You could just make a mechanic where you put gushing on all the 475 plus, and then you put haste percent on all the 470. Maybe you don't have a lot of 470s, so you put haste percent on all the 465 and gushing on all the 470. All you really want is a mixture because they synergize with each other. Having more haste gives you more gushing procs, having more gushing makes your haste better, and having more gushing gives you sustained damage that your necrotic strikes. Having more haste, you have more necrotic strikes, means huge healing absorption on them, but you get the gushing pressure, which means they have to heal through the necro, but you're also killing them at the same time. So the fusion of haste and gush has just really pushed Unholy into a fantastic spot for single target pressure. So you want a mixture. 5-3, 6-2, 7-1, 4-4. Any of those things are going to be limitless pressure if you build yourself properly with haste first and the proper traits and the Gatiku, spoiler. So there's no answer to that. It should depend on your gear and the type of gear that you have and the item level of that gear. So look at your gear. Look at what you have access to. Buy a lot of haste and gushing. So every time the haste or the gushing rolls around and you buy a lot of them, you're stocking them up and you get an upgrade. So you get a 475 piece. You're like, okay, I'll put gushing on that, so I'll put haste on something else. And you keep that balance of having very high item level gushing and having everything else be haste percent. And you just always have a fair amount of haste, a ton of gush, and a lot of damage. As for the next corruption question, which is, okay, so I have a little bit more corruption left over. What should I run? That one I can be pretty definitive about. There's only two things worth running, for sure, in that spot. It's either this first proc for 35 corruption, or an Echoing Void rank 2, which I should have on those bracers I was going to talk about. There we go. Harkening back to that. Echoing Void rank 2 also gives 35 corruption. That should help you get back to that corruption budget point that you want to be at. And they're both very good. First proc. Verse is a great stat. We should know that by now. And it's a lot of verse, and it's very high uptime. So that's just really good for 35 corruption. Echoing Void is actually pretty high damage since we have so much health. And also gives you purge protection, because when you purge it, you purge Echoing Void, you don't get purged of hots if you're playing with an Ardruid, or really everything has a hot in the game right now except for HPAL, so it's not quite as important. So there you go. Echoing Void rank 2, and eventually maybe rank 3, and the Verse Proc rank 3. Those are extremely valuable tools for that final slot. So the sum of it is some combination of Haste and Verse. Fill that spot with either Verse rank 3 or Echoing Void rank 3 or 2, depending on how late this is when you're watching this video. Look at these numbers. And to get that combination of Haste and Gush, look at the item level of your gear and plan accordingly. So it kind of helps see what I was talking about by the fact that there's just no one perfect build. There's 2 entirely different builds for Frost, both played now at 3k plus by separate and several Frost DKs. And then there's so many people. Well, I like 6-2 Haste to Gush. Well, I like 4-4. Well, I've done really well with 5-3. Well, I've done really good with full Gush. Well, I've done really good with 7-1, just to have a little bit more Haste, but still have that big Gush dot tick. So that question's not going to be answered. Build it based on your gear and your playstyle. Do you all in and you kill somebody right in the opener? Because Haste does really generate a lot of burst pressure since you have so much upfront damage with all that Haste. But then Gush gives you a lot of sustain pressure. And you can kind of do the same thing we did with comps, though. I wouldn't go over it again because it's kind of the same things. Burst for Windwalker, burst for maybe something like a Warlock, and then sustain for S-Priest, maybe Ellie, maybe DH. That's where you would lead more into the Gushing build. So there you go. We couldn't keep it. I wanted to keep it short, but I can never do that. I try and give you guys as much information as possible. Unfortunately, the timestamps will organize it, but I'm not sure that it's going to make it that easy. So it's probably going to be one of those you want to watch through all the way or a few times just to kind of get all the information together. There is separate categories here, but I think all the information is best taken in all at once. And it should really answer some questions, which is all I was trying to do. Why are you running this when you talked about how good this was? Why do some people run this much Gush and then some people run that much Gush? How many Gush should I buy? Is Gush even good? What is Haste? What does that do? It should kind of put those answers to rest and show you how many builds are really powerful, the situations in which they're powerful, and how to build them and what comp to play them with and how to play that comp. It's very possible that near the release date of this video, I will also have a video explaining my personal gameplay in Frosty KDH Ardruid now that we've pushed it pretty high. But the reason I wanted this video out first is because that's very specific. It's not going to be able to be applied. Our strategies will not work with any comp that's not Frosty KDH and then like Ardruid or Monk. So this is the more general video. I think this should answer more questions for more people. And if anybody cares about how we got there, I will make a video explaining my strats against certain comps, play style, and how I win games, specifically playing at my team. So there you go. Best I could do. How are we? 24 minutes. I tried. I hope you guys get something out of this. Hope you guys can push pretty far at the end of the season and get some goals. That would be awesome. And always hit me up in Discord or on my stream if you guys have any more questions. But, you know, good luck and Godspeed, and pray for a 475 Katikus or, you know, the Carapace weapon that I still can't get. Good luck, boys. GG's.